varieties of some crops, such as sugarcane, to market can take well over a decade. With new tech, Avalo reckons it could cut that timeline in half. How have breeders traditionally connected genes with a trait of interest, and how challenging is that process when you have traits that might be associated with, tons of genes?
I think there's really two approaches, forward and reverse. So either you are going in gene by gene and breaking something and then testing the plant to see how it responded. Either it did or it didn't affect the trait that you're interested in. Or you can challenge the plant with a particular condition and then measure the expression of genes and try to discover it that way. Both of those methods can be, I think, very challenging. In the first case, it takes a lot of time and effort and money to create very precise gene edits that you would really want if you were looking to discover the genes for a complex trait. And the other methods, the associative methods, just have a lot of noise in them. Biology is complicated. There's many genes responding. Genes are responding to each other, they're responding to their environment, and so it can be difficult to disentangle that. And exactly as you said, we see in a normal discovery process thousands of genes that are responsible for any given trait.
Wow, yes.
So, I think the days of sort of easy discovery are gone. We use associative methods, but we build on them using machine learning techniques. Rather than looking at each individual gene one at a time, we use machine learning to look at the entire genome all at the same time and look at the response of plants in different environments and then identify which genes are responsible. And of course, we still see a huge number of genes that are responsible, but we can narrow that down much more than is possible today, eliminate a lot of that sort of biological noise in the sea, and just focus on a constellation of key targets for the next parts of our process.
You've got this predictive modeling platform. How does that work?
So when we discover the genetic basis of a complex trait, we then turn that into a predictive algorithm. So you can imagine if you were if you were navigating by the stars, you wouldn't look at every star in the sky, you would focus on a few specific constellations to guide you, and that's basically what we're doing. We design assays that are only looking at the genes that we are interested in, and that allows us to make much more predictive models because those models aren't confounded by the sort of underlying biological noise.
So what is your business model?
To get our seeds and our crops on the market, we really think about ourselves as an integrated crop development company, which means we actually run our own breeding programs.
Okay.
We use our models in our own programs, and we use them to lower the cost of doing that type of development. We then work with growers to get them our seeds and provide them sets of agronomic recommendations that go along with those seeds. And then in some cases, we actually help then sell the final product post-farm gate. In the case of sugarcane, we're working with CCEP, Coca-Cola Europe Pacific Partners. They source all of the sugar in their supply chain in the Pacific from sugarcane that is all coming from Queensland, Australia.
How challenging is that crop to work with, and what are you specifically looking for with this partnership? Is it about growing it in places with less water? Is it about using less fertilizer? What's the focus of the breeding program?
Yeah, sugarcane is a hugely challenging crop to work on. It has an incredibly complex genome, many times more complex than the human genome. It's a perennial crop, and so it has a very long breeding cycle. But that is exactly the type of project I think we want to work on at Avalo, because it has such an impact on the supply chain. For CCEP, it's 16% of their total Scope 3 emissions, which is an enormous number. And so if we're able to make a difference here, we can actually have a huge impact from a sustainability perspective.
So what's the status of your work with them? I understand there's going to be trials in Australia next year?
Yeah, so this year is really about learning for us, going into the supply chain, working with a small core set of growers, and figuring out how we can use our technology, our models, and eventually our genetics to make a difference in this system.
What other crops are you looking at aside from sugarcane?
So a huge amount of our work and our resources go into cotton today. So we're growing cotton primarily up in the panhandle of Texas, and we're working with other elements of the supply chain, textile mills, brands, to be able to get that product into the market. So this year we're actually producing on 2,000 acres in Texas. Next year we hope to more than double that. So that is a solution that is already in the process of scaling.
I also read that you're looking at like rubber and rice or fast-growing broccoli.
Our broccoli work is in the process of being commercialized with a partner in New York. Our rubber work is ongoing. Unfortunately, that is work with the government, and so I can't talk about it, but it's really exciting work looking at domestic sources of rubber. And in rice, we have a lot of expertise in rice at the company. We've done grant-funded work in rice over the course of our development as a company. But an important thing for us at Avalo is that our scale-up is really led by elements in the industry that we want to work in, and the supply chain we want to work in, that see a really burning need for that problem. So we're not scaling any of our solutions. Sugar and cotton are scaling because we have really good commercial partners.
After you've identified genes associated with traits of interest, would the next step be gene editing or genetic engineering or traditional plant breeding?
We're really focused on traditional breeding because we think it has the lowest cost profile, a very short regulatory process, and that ultimately for us means that we can get a product out to market faster and spend less money on R&D.
Is it unusual to have, a CPG company like Coca-Cola getting this involved, right down the supply chain?
CCP has been an incredibly supportive partner, and I think a lot of their interest reflects a change in the industry as a whole, where if you want to be able to tackle supply chain issues, scope 3 emission or quality issues, you have to be able to look all the way back through the supply chain. And in many cases, a large corporate partner like that doesn't have the internal capability to sort of walk it all the way back. So I think actually it's been a really nice partnership because we can work together with CCP to go back to the level of the grower and offer solutions that normally wouldn't be available to a company like Coca-Cola to avert or mitigate CO2 emissions. Coca-Cola has invested in our company and is also supporting some of the R&D process, and that's really helpful for us as a startup because it allows us time to understand how to build a sustainable and scalable business model in this space that ultimately is supported not just by Coca-Cola, but by the mills and the growers and the entire supply chain, because I think if we want to build a healthy business, we really need everybody's support in order to grow it.